You would be surprised how often the lawyers I work with simply don't realise that it is possible to speak up in a particular situation. They presume they have no power and have to do exactly what's asked of them. My name is Cecilia Poullain. Welcome to the Pathway to Partnership podcast. You're listening to the Pathway to Partnership podcast, the place for ambitious women lawyers who want to thrive in law firms, not just survive. My name is Cecilia Poullain. I'm a former finance lawyer, and now I help women lawyers make partner with clarity, confidence, and clients. Together, we'll unpack the real skills behind success in law, from navigating power dynamics and overcoming imposter syndrome, to building a book of business and shaping a career that works for you. So if you're ready to bring purpose, confidence, and strategy to your pathway to partnership, you're in the right place. We all know we should be setting boundaries. People talk about boundaries all the time. But the difficult thing, especially when you work in a law firm, is knowing which boundaries to set. Because as a lawyer, it's easy to go to extremes. At one extreme, you can end up working all hours of the day and night, weekends, missing dinners, missing weekends away, accepting poor treatment, doing anything that partners or clients ask you to do. Or you can swing the other way and focus only on your own needs. We all know people who say, I need this and I need that, and it drives everybody crazy. And the real challenge is just finding the right balance. In this episode, I'm focusing on two particular types of boundaries: time and behaviour. How you allocate your energy and your time, and how you allow yourself to be treated. But there are lots of other sorts of boundaries, in particular ethical boundaries, or deciding how to act when something clashes with your values, deciding what you will or what you won't do. But we'll look at those in a later episode. What happens when you don't set any boundaries at all? A senior partner in a major UK law firm told me about a brilliant young trainee. The trainee had a dinner with her family on a Friday night, and so the partner negotiated with the client that they wouldn't get their email until Monday morning. But then the partner was actually pretty annoyed to see that the trainee had skipped the dinner with her family and sent the email out to the client at 11 p.m. that night. And so the following Monday, the partner talked to the trainee about it and actually reprimanded her. And the trainee was pretty upset because she was so used to being perfect and she thought she'd done the right thing. But the partner told her this: if you keep this up, you will start to hate this job and you will burn out. There will be consequences if you don't set any boundaries in relation to your work-life balance. So that's just one example of somebody who wasn't setting any boundaries at all. If you want to become a partner in a law firm, you actually need to have a strong support network at home. You need to have people who are aware of what it's going to take to make it and who are willing to make those compromises and be flexible. But you also need people who aren't too flexible, because sometimes your partner, your friends, your family need to be the ones saying, this weekend you're not working. This wedding is more important. This dinner is more important. This event matters more. Because without that, the sacrifices of partnership can consume everything. And if two lawyers are in a relationship together, that's especially tricky. Because when there's nobody outside the system saying, that's enough, neither of you put limits in place. Boundaries can show up in time, but they can also show up in behaviour. One of my clients was working with a partner who often spoke to her pretty aggressively or treated her pretty badly. And unfortunately, she is not alone on the receiving end of that sort of treatment. And for a long time, she just accepted it. She, in fact, believed that she was meant to accept it. But it had major consequences on the way she behaved, because in order to avoid a cutting remark, she was always second-guessing his reaction. And you can imagine how exhausting that was. But after we'd worked together for a while, she finally built up the courage to say to him, "Listen, if you keep speaking to me like that, I'm leaving the room." She was absolutely terrified when she said it, but it changed everything in their relationship. So the next day he was smiling, he was joking with her, he was treating her with so much more respect. Young lawyers often think they have to do everything the partner asks, but it's actually not true. If you're good at what you do, you have way more power than you think. The partners need you. They don't want you to leave. They don't want to have to find someone to replace you. And that gives you power. Okay, we've talked about setting boundaries or not setting boundaries enough. What about setting boundaries that are too rigid? I've been hearing a lot of complaints that the latest generation of lawyers, the youngest lawyers, are saying things like, "Sorry, gotta go, I have a dinner tonight," and then leaving the senior lawyers to finish the work that needs to be done for the next day. And I've also heard that that's exacerbated by remote working, because sometimes the younger lawyers simply don't realise that everyone else is hard at it and they clock off even though they're still needed. But when young lawyers do this has a massive impact on the stress of those who have to cover. It means that the older lawyers lose trust in the younger lawyers, and it also means the client ends up paying partner or senior associate rates for work that should have been done by somebody else. And the partners are annoyed because they're working late on something that should have been done by somebody more junior, and they feel as though they've had to work really hard to become a partner and that things ought to actually be a bit easier now. Some junior lawyers aren't like that. My partner was telling me about a meeting she held each week to make sure that work was fairly distributed across the team. And she realised that two of the more junior lawyers had way too much on their plate. And so for each of them, she took a file off them. But within an hour, both those lawyers were back in her office asking for their files back. So those particular junior lawyers were very happy working until midnight, and it was more important for them to get the experience. So what's the middle ground? How do you know which boundaries to set? The starting point is to listen to your emotions. So if something is starting to irritate you or make you angry or annoy you, that is a clear indication that a boundary is being stepped over. That according to your unique value system, what's happening isn't fair. But that's only the starting point. The next step is to look as objectively as possible at the whole situation. What does the client need here? Is that a need or is it a want? Is there a real deadline, or is it that's just what the client is saying? How much negotiation room is there? And it's the same with the partner or the more senior lawyer. What's their position? How much time do they need to review your work in order to meet the client's deadline, for example? It may be that you don't have all the information. And then thirdly, think about what you might be able to communicate in that situation. More often than you would believe, the lawyers I work with don't even realise that it is possible to speak up in a particular situation. They presume that they have no power and just need to do whatever is asked of them. And that's why I do a whole lot of role play in my sessions with my clients, so that they can start to see how it feels to express certain needs. Sometimes what they say first, it isn't quite right, so they adjust, they change, until they find a phrase or phrases that they feel comfortable with. And then I'm able to reflect back to them how what they say is impacting me. And of course, that's only my experience, but at least it's an external point of view. It's incredibly powerful when you understand that it is okay to ask, And it is okay to ask in a way that takes into account your needs, the needs of your family, the needs of the more senior lawyer, the needs of the client, perhaps the needs of the other party. So the message really is you don't have to set boundaries all by yourself. And in fact, you probably shouldn't. It's by having conversations with the people around you you can adapt, share information, and define the right boundaries for everybody. The best workplaces are the ones where there's enough trust to have those open conversations. And I've met so many women partners who are creating this kind of culture, where juniors feel that they can say, I'm exhausted, where they can say, I have a personal commitment, can we work around it? Or I'm feeling stressed, without particularly wanting the partner to do anything about it. And that openness makes boundaries work for everyone. So setting boundaries isn't about being selfish, and it isn't about accepting anything and everything. It's about balance, communication, and trust. If you get them wrong, you risk either burnout or a damaged reputation. If you get them right, you can build a career that is satisfying and sustainable. So let's recap. Here are the 3 big messages from this episode. Firstly, when you start being irritated or angry, that's a signal that your personal boundaries are being stepped over. Secondly, boundaries only work if they take into account everybody's needs in the situation, and that requires communication. And thirdly, balance is the goal. Not saying yes to everything, not saying no to everything, but calibrating your needs, your team's needs, your family's needs, the client's needs. And as with anything, it takes practice. Sometimes you'll get it wrong, sometimes you'll get it right. But if you aim to have reasonable boundaries, that's where your career will be successful, enjoyable, and sustainable. So that's it for today's episode of the Pathway to Partnership podcast. I hope you're walking away with some practical insights and renewed confidence for your own pathway to partnership. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share it with another woman lawyer, leave a quick review. It helps us reach even more brilliant women in law. You can also visit my website, ceciliapoullain.com, to explore my coaching programs, upcoming events, and free tools to support your growth. Thanks again for listening.